Today I'm going to document my first ever attempt to make spaghetti sauce. I think I'm pretty well prepared here. I'll show you what I have going on, just where we're starting out. I've got a YouTube video up here. This one looked like it was pretty good on how to make spaghetti sauce, so I'm going to be using this. I have my friend's recipe here. I'm going to try using this as well. I might go off this a little bit and then also use what this guy's doing. I've got my tomatoes, so if you watched the last video you saw me pick those. Got some green peppers. I've got my onions here that I had to buy. Unfortunately, my onions really didn't turn out. I only picked a couple of them. I've got some new jars that I bought. This is for the extra tomato gunk and juice that I'm going to be picking out of these. This is the pot I'm using, which I may end up using a second one. I don't know how much sauce that's going to turn into. I've got a bunch of garlic that I picked from the garden. I think that's going to be more than what I use. Measuring cup. I've got some tomato paste over here. I bought a bunch of these. I don't know how many of these I'm going to use. This recipe called for 6 12-ounce cans of tomato paste, and that's what I got here, but I feel like that's a little much, but we'll find out for sure. That's my friend's recipe he got from his gram. So I'm going to get this started here, and we'll see how this turns out. Like I said in the last video, I really wish I was live streaming this so you could tell me if I'm doing this wrong or right, but I'm going to make mistakes probably, and we're going to find out if it turns out or not. So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse these tomatoes off, try to get some of the dirt and stuff off them that was in the garden. Do this in small batches. This is just a little bit of the amount that I picked out of there. So we'll do this quick. To prep the tomatoes, you're going to take them out of the sink, and they should be relatively clean now. So you'll mark an X in the bottom of these with a knife. And the reason you do this is because they're next going to go into a pot of boiling water just for a few seconds, and then immediately into this cold water. That's going to help get the skins off. You don't want to have the skins on when you make your sauce. Now once they're boiling, throw them in the cold water, like so. I decided to use some tongs. I find that to be the easiest way to do this since I don't have any kind of strainer or anything to put in there. Now the next step, we'll have to see how this goes. These are supposed to come right off pretty easily. Oh, looks like it actually worked. Now it's a little mushy inside, but that skin comes right off of there. And that's why you put the X in the top. Hopefully you can see that there. See how it peels right down? You really don't have to get a good start there. It just comes right off for the most part. Let me see if I can grab that. But yeah, this is going to be very time consuming. I'm finding this out right now because I have to do every one of these tomatoes, and you saw how many I picked. So that one's done. There's number one. So we'll do this like 1,500 more times and I'll be done with this section. It's turned into a full-blown operation out here. The next step after you have the tomatoes here is to squeeze most of the liquid and the seeds out of it, as my kind assistant is doing right now. And then we're putting them into this bucket right here. This is like the canner that I use. So that's basically what's going to go to make our sauce. And here's what we have left. I've got these ones cooling. I got to get more in here. And this is the junk pile, and this is going to be the chicken's food, and they're going to go nuts on that. So we're just going to keep at this here and hopefully fill this thing up rather quickly. Alright, about halfway through, this has turned into quite the process. I'll show you what I have so far here. That's the total amount of what I squeezed out of all the stuff. And then there's all the pulp and liquid, because the tomatoes are mostly liquid. That's what the majority of it ends up being. So I have some ready here to score the bottom. This is what I've been using for the cold water. You can see it's getting pretty filthy. And then my boiling water is still there. But here's how many I have left. So I'm just going to hopefully keep cranking through these. I'd say another 3 boils and I should be done with this section. And hopefully this will be enough to turn into some decent sauce. I perfected the art of getting the skin off these. It just comes off so easily now. It's perfect. Couldn't ask for anything easier than that. Boom. Into the next thing. And finally, 2 hours after I started, the basket is finally empty. Here's what I ended up with getting out of that. This is the big canning jar that I have, so it did turn into quite a bit, but there's still a good bit of liquid in there, so I'm going to strain that out. And here is the leftover stuff. This is going to be for the chickens. This is just like the liquid out of it and the peels. And this is the mess that was created. So I'm going to clean this up real quick and then strain this out, and then we'll get on to the rest of it. Here it is after running through the strainer. This is the biggest bowl we have. It filled it up pretty good. As you can see, I didn't get all the seeds, of course. It's just too difficult without any type of equipment. Alright, finally ready for the next step. I'll show you my list of ingredients that I'm adding to this here. I'm starting from the left here. We got some tomato paste. I don't know how much of this I'll put in. I have 6 of these. I don't think I'm going to need that much for what I have, but it's going to help thicken up the sauce a little bit if need be. Got some olive oil. I have salt and pepper. Got some chili powder, crushed pepper flakes, garlic, green peppers, onions, and some celery. So the first step is to take some of the olive oil, put that in your pan here, which I'm going to use this pan to kind of saute everything before I put it in. And then these tomatoes I'm going to start putting into this pot. Now this is where the mistakes are going to start happening. This is 1 onion that I did here, and you can see that's a cup container there, so that's probably maybe a cup and a half. And then I did a little bit of garlic. Now I don't know how many quarts this is going to turn into, so I don't really know how much of this I want to use, because this is all going to be kind of up in the air. I'm afraid to put too much in, but I think I'm just going to start with this, and then I'm going to start doing some green peppers. I did half a green pepper, and I'm probably going to do a good bit more of that. I might just do all of those. But I don't want to put too much onion and garlic in there, because I read online that if you have too much in your cans, it can cause problems if they're stored for an extended period of time. So we'll give this a shot with how it is and see how it makes out. We're going to saute these. You don't want to get the garlic too hot from what I saw online. You want to keep it a light color. So I'm going to mix this around a good bit. Alright, the sauce actually fit into a container on its own. So I'm going to put the onions and garlic into that and mix it in now. I decided to saute some green peppers to put in there, and then this is my basil that I'm going to cut up and also put into the mix. And that's what it looks like right now. Let's just have it on low, boiling gently, and we'll see what this cooks down to. I'm kind of worried. It's only a 5-quart kettle or pot, and I have 12 jars here I was hoping to fill, so I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see. Next I'm going to put the green peppers into the boiling solution of tomatoes. And this is my basil, and this is my oregano I'm putting in. There's about 2 tablespoons of each of those there. Alright, here's how it looks after adding those things. It kind of looks like a nice salsa, but I'm hoping that boils down and makes something a little smoother. Now, next things I'm going to add, I'm going to do a tablespoon of salt, pepper, I'm going to do a tablespoon of chili powder, and I'm going to sprinkle some of these dried pepper flakes in there to make a nice little spicy mix. There's how the sauce looks with everything added. Now, to be honest, I am completely off of the recipe. I was doing some research, and I'm thinking that what I'm cooking here is a lot less than what all these recipes that I have are intended for, including the one that my friend emailed me and the ones that I was looking at online. So I've been tailoring everything back a little bit. The only thing I haven't added to that was the tomato paste, which I have over here. I'm going to wait to see how it turns out before I need to thicken it up. I don't know how many of these I'm going to need. Probably not the full 6, which was recommended from my friend's recipe. And then I never put any celery in it. I wasn't really digging that, so I think I'm going to scrap that. I only used 2 of the 3 peppers. Didn't use nearly as much garlic as what I thought. And I only used 1 tablespoon of all of those spices, which his recipe calls for 2 tablespoons, so I kind of cut that back, but I did leave the same amount of basil and oregano in there. And I guess I'll clean up everything around here and let that boil for a couple of hours, and then I'll come back and let you know how it turned out. It's been about 3 hours. I've been letting the sauce boil, and I think we're finally down to the point where it's ready to be jarred. Take a look at it here. I added 2 cans of the tomato paste, which thickened it up pretty nicely, and it is a pretty chunky sauce. Usually not a fan of that, but man, this stuff is really good. I tried a little bit of it. You can get a good look at it there. You can see some of the garlic that's in there and some of the oregano and the basil. It just turned into a really awesome sauce. It's nice and spicy. So the next step, this is not yet done. I mean, this is done, but we're on to another step here. Got my jars. Next step is to take the water bath, and you put the jars in here and boil them to make them sanitary, because you don't want any kind of bacteria or anything in these things. So we're going to boil these and then put the sauce into the jars and then boil them again for about 30 minutes, and that should be it. I'm thinking this is going to make, hopefully, if that's a 5-quart saucepan, I'm thinking that this is going to be more than enough to jar it up. The important thing is to fill your jars with water beforehand, because they're just going to float in there. I put my lids and everything in there too, and you let that come to a nice boil. Okay, brought that to a boil, took all the jars out, emptied them out, and this is what we're going to do now. We're going to take this little funnel thing here and take the sauce and put it in there. Well, that whole day of hard work came down to 4 jars of sauce. kind of disappointing. I was hoping for more, but obviously you got to have a lot of tomatoes to really make it work out. And it did turn out to be some pretty good sauce. So I consider this a pretty successful first experiment into the tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce world. Next year I'm going to hit this even harder. I'm going to grow more aromas. I'm going to get the product off Amazon that I was talking about called a Squeezo. That'll really help me make the most of all my tomato products there, and we're going to make a ton of this. I'm hoping next year we're going from 4 and we're going to go to 24. So I'm going to give these one last bath in the water to boil it up pretty good, make sure all the bacteria and everything's gone, and then we're going to enjoy these at some point in the future and put them on the shelf. So thanks for watching me, thanks for joining me on this, and there'll be more videos soon.